It's the Acting Income Podcast with Ben Hauck, episode 10. My recap of episodes 1 through 9.
It's the Acting Income Podcast with Ben Hauck. Turn your passion into income, Ben will show you how. With all the resources that you need to make it as an actor in an expensive city. To stay balanced and make money, you really can't go wrong with actingincome.com.
Welcome to the Acting Income Podcast. I'm Ben Hauck, and on this podcast we talk about anything and everything that helps you earn an income as an actor. Many thanks for tuning in. This is episode 10, titled My Recap of episodes 1 through 9. Pull up the show notes right now at actingincome.com/episode 10. Just before we dive in, I want to say, if you're liking this podcast, please tell someone else about it. Tell an acting friend when you're in holding, tell an acting friend when you're at an audition, show them how to subscribe, and tell them why they should be listening to acting podcasts. It really means a lot in growing this podcast, and you may not realize that that small thing you do makes one heck of a difference. If you tell someone, tweet at me. I'm at Acting Income on Twitter, and I'd love to hear about it. Now, a plug for today's sponsor, the Call Sheet Cheat Sheet. You're working on set, you're given sides, and there's this funny sheet on the front with lots of codes on it. These codes are launch codes for a nuclear weapon. No, they're codes that tell you a lot about what you're doing today on set. The tough thing is, you don't know what they mean. That's why there's the Call Sheet Cheat Sheet. The Call Sheet Cheat Sheet from Stand-In Central is a jam-packed glossary of the many codes you'll find on the call sheet. Whether you're a principal actor or a stand-in, the Call Sheet Cheat Sheet defines codes like SWF, WF, PWF, and WTF, just kidding, so you can better predict how your day on set will be. I definitely wish I had it when I was starting out. To instantly download the Call Sheet Cheat Sheet to your CPU, which is also a film term on the cheat sheet, visit standincentral.com/cheat sheet. That's standincentral.com/cheat sheet. This episode's a recap episode of the first 9 episodes of the Acting Income Podcast. This episode's a bit of an experiment. I've never heard a podcast do it before. It seemed like a good idea, so I thought, what the heck. I'm going to summarize these past episodes in case you missed any, and in case you just tuned in and want to be pointed to particular episodes after listening to this episode. Also in this recap, I'm going to share what I've learned in these last episodes. And let me just say, I've learned a shocking ton. Let's jump in. Episode 1 is the podcast launch, and I titled it, How I Make an Income as an Actor and What Inspired This Podcast. In the episode, I share my evolution as an actor since graduating college to today in New York City. I also share how I make an income as an actor and what inspired the Acting Income Podcast. I touch on mostly working as a background actor and a stand-in, and what I found out with respect to the classification of background actors under the 2005 SAG Basic Agreement, under whose terms I frequently work. Looking back on that episode, I'm starting to realize a nagging theme has been going on in my actor life. I've felt slighted by my union SAG-AFTRA. Here I was, a trained, degreed actor, and I was doing union work, but my union was marginalizing my acting work. It was calling me, when I did background work, a non-performer. That said, it was calling others performers. Airplane and helicopter pilots are performers? Why not background actors? But the episode was hardly a moan fest. The negative discovery was a positive charge. By the union classifying background actors essentially as non-performers, I saw better what I needed to be doing in this city. Background acting was not performing. So I needed to get non-BG work. I needed to get lines. There's a lot more I say in that episode, so make sure you give it a listen. Plus, it's the beginning of this podcast. You can access the show notes for episode 1 at actingincome.com/episode 1. Episode 2 was titled, How to Sort Out All the Advice You Hear as an Actor. It was released the same day as episode 1, and it takes some of the lessons from the book I wrote titled Long-Form Improv. It teaches the difference between rules and principles. It was a lesson I needed to have when I was taking long-form improv classes long ago, and it's a distinction I made early in my book so that my readers could better understand what I was writing. In some sense, I was writing rules, and in another sense, I was writing principles. I'll leave it to the episode to distinguish between the two, or just get a copy of my book at actingincome.com/LFI. But that episode 2 must have been putting some pressure on me as an actor. By distinguishing between rules and principles, I guess I was starting to see the instructions I'd followed absolutely in my acting life without question maybe needed to be questioned. Maybe I didn't have to always do something. Maybe I never was supposed to always do something. Maybe I should do something different sometimes. Basically, this episode is about the power of making exceptions, that no instruction is truly absolute, and that sometimes the rules we live by can't accommodate for the complex reality that futures unfold into, no matter how much our teachers insist we follow them. You can access the show notes for episode 2 at actingincome.com/episode 2. Episode 3 came out on the same day as episodes 1 and 2, which is a strategy that got this podcast immediately into the iTunes New and Noteworthy list for podcasts. Episode 3 is titled, How I Figured Out My Monthly Spending and Saved Up to Move to New York City. This episode is an experiment in getting granular with my podcast, a test to see just how interested the audience might get in specifics. I know I like the nitty-gritty when I'm listening to podcasts. Specifically, I talk about this little sheet I created back in circa 1998 that I call my saving sheet. If you just can't wait, you can get my saving sheet by visiting actingincome.com/saving sheet. Every month I spend about 4 hours poring over what I spent and what I made in the prior month, classifying every expense and totaling everything up by hand. It really gives me an intimate and intricate understanding of my financial situation in NYC and especially very accurate information on whether I'm saving money or losing money. It takes the guesswork out of my finances. I'm continually exposed to my earning and spending since I do this every month and have for, 17 years. So I guess you could say that this episode shows I know what I make and need to earn and whether my current acting career was servicing those goals. Put that insight together with the insights from the prior 2 episodes of feeling slighted by SAG-AFTRA and needing to make some exceptions to the rules I've followed in my life, and you start to realize that I'm looking to bust out as an actor. Knowing my financial situation really helps to reduce risks that come with change, or at least it helps me understand what degree of risk I can handle. Intrigued on how I saved up to move to New York City or about this saving sheet? Get the show notes for episode 3 at actingincome.com/episode 3. Episode 4 covers the topic of success and is titled How the Word Success Applies to You as an Actor. In podcasting and elsewhere, I hear the word success thrown around, and perhaps more so, I hear people say that they don't really know what success is. In this episode, I give a pretty simple definition for it, which can be helpful in gauging whether you've become a success or not. Success depends a lot on what goals you set, which is something I elaborate on in the episode. And in the episode, I posit whether Tom Cruise can open a door. My guess, he can, and he can do it very well. How this episode relates to me is that maybe I'm not meeting my acting goals. That maybe I need to do something different in order to achieve my acting goals. I'm finding that these episodes are a lot more indicative of something going on inside me with respect to my acting career than I had realized. They weren't as random a selection of content as I had thought when recording them. The show notes for episode 4 on the word success are available at actingincome.com/episode 4. Episode 5 is titled How to Think Statistically as an Actor. Again, the lessons in this episode had some real relevance to my current acting life. In fact, last year I was so busy. I was working nearly 5 days a week, mostly as a stand-in for much of the year. Right around the time I recorded episode 5, my work had suddenly slowed. So I had to think statistically about my work so I didn't freak out needlessly. Chances were, despite a period of lack of work, I would work again. That said, anytime an actor goes through a period of work, then hits a relative famine, the questions come up. Should I be doing this? Should I be looking for another job? While I didn't have those thoughts yet, it does make me wonder about what other ways can I support myself in tougher times, which is exactly the kind of motivation for putting out this podcast. I want to know how actors make money, not just as actors, but also outside of acting. And I'm not the know-it-all on the topic. I'm learning too. Episode 5 is my last solo episode before having the next 4 episodes include guests. But don't let me put the cart before the horse. The show notes for episode 5 on thinking statistically are at actingincome.com/episode 5. Now let's get that cart back behind the horse and talk about episode 6, titled How to Write to Supplement Your Acting Career, with Ann Diacetis. It's my first interview on the podcast, and Ann Diacetis is a spunky, upbeat actor and writer who brought her A game to her interview by recording in a really nice microphone in the sonic comfort of her own closet. Ann is super smart, and I say that especially because she seized upon the opportunity to pitch her topic for the show probably after listening to my first episode. Ann offers some really great inspiration and confidence that actors can write, and write well for money, and write for people who really need help with writing, and for a pretty respectable wage, and even get the flexibility so many actors crave for auditions and sudden bookings. Ann does all kinds of writing, from creative writing to technical writing, and has some very simple and very specific guidance for actors wanting to write. Gosh, I never thought that writing someone's Internet Movie Database bio could be thought of as a writing job. She extends an offer to listeners for her writing services too, so check it out. Get the show notes for episode 6 at actingincome.com/episode 6. Episode 7 was one of my big gets. It's titled How Going PHICorp Affected My Acting Career, with Ricardo Lori. Ricardo is an actor I've worked with for quite a few years, mostly on the Showtime show Nurse Jackie. I saw Ricardo on a film set last summer, and somehow it got out to me that he was a PHICorp actor. I knew a little bit about PHICorp, but not a lot, and that conversation led to my asking him a lot of questions, which he gladly answered. The basics of PHICorp when it comes to SAG-AFTRA actors are that you pay fees to the union, but you aren't bound by their rules, like the rule that you can't work non-union. So when you're PHICorp in SAG-AFTRA, you're able to work union and non-union. It's also something backed by the United States Supreme Court. For more on PHICorp, you have to listen to the episode, and you definitely have to hear Ricardo's experiences working as a PHICorp actor, which are very illustrative and contradict a lot of the scary language you hear about going PHICorp. This all said, I've looked into PHICorp. I did a lot of research last year and seriously considered it, but ultimately decided not to go. Over the past 9 episodes, I've reconsidered PHICorp. After talking to Ricardo about it, I was motivated even more to go PHICorp. Why? Again, feeling slighted by SAG-AFTRA, feeling the need to take exception to rules, feeling the need to improve my acting income, considering how successful I am in light of my acting goals, evaluating my income when work suddenly slows down, seeing how writing is one of several ways to generate side income, and hearing Ricardo's increased auditions and overall happiness in going PHICorp. You have to hear the episode and share it with others. Get the show notes for episode 7 at actingincome.com/episode 7. Episode 8 was a pure joy to do, and it's titled How to Coach Running to Complement Your Acting and Modeling Career, with Elizabeth Ann Corkum. Elizabeth has become a top New York City running coach going by the name Coach Corky, and I remember way back when running 8-minute miles with her thoroughly exhausted her. Flash forward to a 5K race we did in Astoria, and she literally spanked me as she passed me, finishing second among females in that humid race. But she even grew after then, running marathons, ultramarathons, surviving marathons, and dedicating herself to the education required to legitimately call herself a running coach. She's first an actor and a model who narrowly missed a Runner's World cover, but something tells me that opportunity is still a very real reality. And you'll find in this interview how well suited coaching running can be for an actor or model. She also extends an offer, should you want to hire her as a running coach. Elizabeth is a great example of how her outside life can benefit her acting and modeling life. Get the show notes for episode 8 at actingincome.com/episode 8. Episode 9, much like episode 7 with Ricardo Lori, also felt like a get. Episode 9 is titled Why I Choose to Stay a Non-Union Actor, with Eric S. Robertson. Eric's one of those people you see and feel you've known forever. In fact, we aren't exactly sure how we've met. We think for now it was at the Barrow Group School, which we both attended. I ran into him on set back in March 2015, and I shared with him my idea for this podcast, which excited him, so it encouraged me. In that conversation, he opened up about how he prefers to stay non-union, and I immediately realized I wanted his perspective represented on my podcast. I mean, who thinks that? Turns out, in my journey over these last 9 episodes, I've pined a bit for non-union work. This is only because SAG-AFTRA limits my ability to work non-union, meaning that I'm forced to stay only on union jobs, which is fine if I'm satisfied with background work and stand-in work. While that work pays the bills, I'm largely prevented from just getting out and acting however I want to, under whatever conditions I want to. In other words, on the whole, I can't do acting. I have to ask someone who wants to use me, is it SAG-AFTRA? I'm also expected by my union to try to get non-union productions to go union. Now, for some actors with clout who are in demand for their name, this may be realistic to expect them to do, and it may work in making some non-union productions union. I don't see that for me. Instead, I see if I were to ask a non-union production to go union to use me, I probably would lose the job to another actor. How does that help me as an actor? Do I get a pin from the union that says, I refuse to work non-union and all I got was this lousy pin? I don't even get that. In my interview with Eric S. Robertson, he shares the pluses and minuses of doing non-union work. While he chooses to stay non-union, it's just for now. He sees a future wherein he joins the union. But he also has some frank opinion on SAG-AFTRA's recent initiative that calls non-union actors like him pre-members. You've got to listen to Eric's episode. You can find the show notes for episode 9 at actingincome.com/episode 9. So, there you have it. In this journey in creating episodes 1 through 9 of the Acting Income podcast, I've questioned my membership with SAG-AFTRA, I've seen the benefits of doing non-union work in the aim of acting, and I've learned about other work I can do to supplement my acting. The biggest question for me right now is, will I declare financial core status? Stay tuned. I don't know the answer. I'm curious myself. Please subscribe to the Acting Income podcast if you haven't already. It's on iTunes, Stitcher, and however you listen to podcasts on your Android device. When you subscribe, new episodes download as they become available. To subscribe to the Acting Income podcast on iTunes, visit actingincome.com/iTunes. To subscribe on an Android device, visit actingincome.com/Android. Just click subscribe and you're done. Also, I'd like to take this time to open things up for you. In episode 1, I called this podcast a community. If you're listening to my mouth make these noises right now, by virtue of just listening, you're in that community. And I want to extend this offer out to you. Think it over. Let it nag you a bit. This is the offer. What can you share that the Acting Income podcast would benefit from hearing? Are you an actor? How do you make it work? If you make a living only doing acting jobs, super bravo. If you don't, what do you do? How do you survive? What do you think about coming on the show as a guest and sharing what you do with other actors in the same boat as you, trying to make money to fund the work they love to do? I'll say the link once. I hope you're listening. I want you to not forget this, to remember this. What I would like you to do is think about what I just said, about what you do to make it work as an actor, and I want you to pitch me your story. Here's the link to go to pitch me your story. actingincome.com/pitch. And that, my dear listening friends, is the show. This episode was sponsored by the Call Sheet Cheat Sheet from Stand-In Central. To download the Call Sheet Cheat Sheet, visit standincentral.com/cheat sheet. The show notes for this episode are available at actingincome.com/episode 10, where you can leave a comment on this episode. You can also find Acting Income on Twitter and Facebook. Rate and review this podcast on iTunes by visiting actingincome.com/iTunes. Text someone you know the sentence "I love you." And if you'd like to sponsor an episode, check out actingincome.com/advertise. I'm Ben Hauck. Whee! See you on the next 10 episodes. And for more information, as always, check out actingincome.com. I love saying that.